Hello, my name is Christian Willauer, and I represent the 5th District on Wilmington City Council. I just started serving on Wilmington City Council in January of this year, 2025. So I've lived in the city of Wilmington over 15 years. I moved here from Charlotte, North Carolina. Before that, I lived in Michigan, Boston, and my background is in community development and urban planning. And so when I moved to Wilmington, I brought that background and wanted to get involved in what was going on in my neighborhood, in my community. So I started knocking on doors. I talked to Habitat for Humanity. I was lucky enough living in the West Side to knock on the door of West End Neighborhood House, and met with Paul Calistro, and he gave me a chance, and so I started working at West End Neighborhood House pretty soon after moving here. I wanted to, bring what I understood about doing community work, doing neighborhood-based community development in community economic development, affordable housing, things like that. I wanted to be able to do that in my community. So I lived on the West Side. West End Neighborhood House is based in the West Side, and so I wanted to be able to make a difference in the place where I lived. And so I started working there on a project having to do with vacant properties and bringing back vacant properties. And then, I always liked gardening, and I lived not too far from the Rodney Reservoir. There was a big empty space, and I started getting involved with my neighbors on trying to create a community garden at the Rodney Reservoir. And that just grew. I met a lot of neighbors, and it just became clear that there's a lot of people who wanted to get more involved but weren't that connected. So, with Paul's leadership, but also a lot of the leaders in the community of the West Side, kind of west of 95, we put together the West Side Grows Together Coalition, which was kind of knitting together all the different community groups, like the neighborhood associations plus the community-based organizations, and put together West Side Grows Together. And that I was able to bring my background in community planning we put together a West Side plan. It was just like the impact of a lot of people saying, like, where do we want our neighborhood to go? And what are the projects that we want to make a priority? And so then, I was able to work on that for the next few years, just trying to make those projects happen. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun to work with your neighbors on trying to make a difference. But I also learned a lot along the way. And one of the things that people, would talk about would be vacant properties. They talk about, the cost of housing. They talk about, wanting to make sure that the services, like, the sidewalks were fixed. And so it kind of rolled up into policy issues. And I realized that projects are great. We did a lot of great projects with, on the West Side, like getting people involved in renovating our parks, doing community playground design projects where we got neighbors, children, to pick out the playground equipment and think about where we wanted, building up the community. But I realized, even as much as you can do a lot with projects, and a lot of those projects, like what got me interested in running for city council was also the chance to work with the city on all these projects. I mean, you can't make a difference in your community without working with the city, because the city, owns a lot of the areas that you're trying to improve, like the parks, so I had a chance to work with the different administrations over time. And, and also the different departments. And so I, got a chance to work with the city and work on projects and move things forward and see how that connection between like residents plus, the city can make a huge difference, can make our places better. But there's these policy decisions behind that I felt like, you don't get that just by doing projects. And some of the policies were, like parking tickets, like red light tickets, like these things that really impact people's lives, like vacant properties. Like, what's our policy? What are we doing around vacant properties as a city? And so I wanted to get involved in policy issues as well, because you can make a difference with a project, but with a policy you can, impact a much bigger, in a much bigger way. So that's what kind of led me to think about more like getting involved in kind of issues and then, run for city council. Well, based on my work, doing community work plus, running, a couple of times. But running, there's a few things that people told me they were their priorities. And I want to work on city council. I want to work on the priorities of the people of the 5th District, on you, the residents, your priorities. I want to make a difference on the things that people told me about. And so the main things that I heard were like a really big priority that people wanted their government to work on was housing. And I want to really focus on helping people to stabilize their housing situations. That's and also improve. You know, a lot of people live in housing that they're paying rent and the landlord's not keeping up the property. So I really want to focus on what can the city do to support residents to make sure residents are living in healthy places. And the second thing is that they can afford. So I want to look at legislation, policy that can help stabilize rents and also make sure that the new development includes rents that are affordable for people with regular jobs. So one of my priorities is to really focus on housing and address the, the things that people already said they want us to work on. And then I guess the other thing with housing is homeowners. You know, there's a fair number of homeowners who can afford, the day-to-day, but when the big repairs come, they don't have the savings. So I think strengthening our homeowner repair program, making our homeowner repair program permanent, supporting our homeowners, supporting people who are renting, and just stabilizing our neighborhoods by helping people stabilize their housing. So housing, priority number one. After that, I think that the government, we have control. We don't have control over everything, but the things that we do have control over, we should work to make sure that we're, doing things in a way that doesn't destabilize residents. So I know we have a budget, we have to raise money, but we have to do it in a way that is, fair and doesn't have an impact on residents that, is like kind of harmful. So the way that I think the city does parking tickets, red light tickets, and water billing, sometimes it can be harmful. And specifically around collections practices, like when you get a boot or you get your car towed, I just talked to a lot of residents that, that extra charge is a financial burden that they really can't afford. So I think that the city can do reforms around how we're doing things that can make sure that the families who live here, we're not taking away their financial stability. And I think that that's something where the city needs to focus. And so on fine and fee reform, that's my second priority. And then the third thing is I want to work directly with the civic associations in the neighborhood. There's a lot of really great people who are involved in their community, all over the 5th District. And people come up with priorities every month. And I want to make sure that I'm working on those priorities. So I try to go to all the civic associations and let people know, okay, what's your priorities this month? What's the top 5? Let's work on those, and get results. And then we can move on to the next 5. So I want to work on policy issues, but then I want to really focus on, kind of those very specific things that people identify as important through their civic associations, also just contacting me directly. But I think it's really good when communities can come together and say, listen, we want this fixed. So, I think part of what I want to do is just work with civic associations, identify priorities, try to work with the city on, what can we do to address this and get some things done to just improve the quality of life in the neighborhoods. The 5th District is really great. And, some of the things that I really like is that there's a wide variety of stores and restaurants. So, Dominican Cafe, if you haven't been there. Run, don't walk to get some really good Dominican food. And then, there's a ton of restaurants that you can go to, on 4th Street. And so I really like that. In addition, there's great parks, and a lot of those have been improved by residents getting involved and working with the city on these community designs and really making our parks the best that they can be. And then also, the neighborhood organizations. There's some amazing neighborhood organizations that provide a lot of services, community-based, like the Latin American Community Center provides, they provide early childhood care, but they also provide help for people with, immigration and things like that. So there's just organizations that are really in touch with what people are, direct needs. And so I just have a lot of respect for those hardworking people that are running those organizations every day. And then, the William Hicks Anderson Center is just a great resource in West Center City. And it's got great facilities. I just think that there's a lot here. It's all about the people in the end, the residents of the 5th District. A lot of people have lived here for a really long time, really care about their communities, have given a lot to their communities. And my goal as city council representative is just to support the residents of the 5th District so we can make our neighborhoods the best they can be. Nobody should just drive through Wilmington. You want to stop in Wilmington and kind of get to know what the city has to offer. But what I think makes living in Wilmington really different from maybe living in other places is just it's a very homey place. A lot of people have lived here for a long time. A lot of people have family who also live here, and it's not that big, so you can get around. And when you go different places, you see people So it's like a big city, but it's a small town at the same time. So I just think that what that gives us is a chance to, we can work together. Like if we know each other, we should be able to work together. And I think that it's got everything. I mean, it's not too far to walk to a park. It's not too far to get downtown, and I think just makes life so much easier to be able to get from one place to another without having to, battle traffic and things like that. So, it's the connections that you have from being a small place, but also it's like we don't give up anything by being small. It's still like big. We have a downtown. We have different neighborhoods that have different personalities, and so that's what I really like about Wilmington. It's got everything, but it's not that big.